Today we have Mr. Lucky this week, since we're now done with the whole Abby Donovan flashback scenarios and everything popping up here and there, and even last week being one of the most despairing episodes I've ever seen, and even some of the Ray Donovan fans can actually agree on that. We're taking a look at this week's episode, episode 9, Mr. Lucky. So, the episode continues off where episode 7 finished, with Ray just, after Ray pounded Terry for telling him that he's responsible for killing his wife. And just as Ray relaxes, or at least he goes out and about, he winds up getting a call from the person that he made a deal with helping her out on, as he winds up receiving a call about George and the box we saw in Shelley Duvall, and how that box just vanished. We move on to Daryl and Mickey as they dump the body of Frank Barnes, whom we saw from the episode that basically Daryl winded up shooting him blank in the forehead, and now he's dead and they're in deep trouble for such a thing, so investigations may happen later. But we're here to focus on what's important now. So like I said, they're dumping the body in the lake as Daryl winds up receiving a call from one of the writers of the revised version of Four Leaf. About telling him how they're hoping that Mickey will be at least a bit proud of at least getting it to the mainstream. But we know how tough Mickey is with certain stuff. Anywho, Smitty winds up aching over his cancer in New York, as he talks about his father and how he told him that he'll be there for him, but after a long time, he hasn't. As Ray winds up returning to his apartment, he winds up staring blankly at an image of Marilyn Monroe for some reason. For partial reasons, this episode seems to be somewhat talking about Marilyn Monroe. First Shelley Duvall, and now Marilyn Monroe. Because, early in the beginning of the episode, as Ray's walking out and seeing a vision of his wife, he winds up coming across a placard on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for Marilyn Monroe. And as he's looking down at the star, and there's some prostitute hookers? I don't know what they're called, but they're definitely a big issue. Or at least, the person that was standing there on the star was just dumping cigarettes and whatnot, as Ray basically told them to keep the star clean and don't get it dirty. Then another thing is that in Ray's apartment, he has a image of Marilyn Monroe hanging up on his wall where the bedroom is. There is one more, but I'm going to talk about that one later. So, Terry winds up meeting Damon's father in the boxing club as Terry tells him he doesn't want the father to go near Damon because he wants to be there and supporting for the rising boxer. So Bunchy frees Dimebag from prison, as we saw in the previous episode, as they wind up coming up with a strategy and trying to figure out where he might be. Because, well, after the heist that they pulled off, they're almost guaranteed to hide somewhere, just to be partially off the police radar, but trust me, that's kind of like Grand Theft Auto logic right there. Hiding underground for a few days, it may fool a couple of people, but I don't know about anything else for that matter. Ray winds up receiving a call from his investigator as he winds up turning on the TV and finding out that the TMZ ripoffs wind up talking about how Nat's in Ray's apartment. As Ray winds up hunting down the guy, as he winds up finding out a source about who was responsible for the TMZ report. But he also winds up getting a source on who possibly could be the one that posted the leak possible, and as well as the disappearance of the box, leading to where Georgie might be. So Bungie and Dimebag wind up finding out that obviously his partner could be somewhere, as they realize that he's with his girlfriend, apparently. Because, yeah, obviously hiding out in the, hiding out in your wife and son's home is probably not a best way to do so. Daryl and Mick wind up looking at the preview for the new version of Four Leaf, which is entitled Mr. Lucky. But of course, seeing as how Mick doesn't like it, he gets completely pissed off and storms out of the screening room, out of the preview room, as they go riding along home, talking about what the screenplay and why Mick's so important on keeping the story original and to itself. And of course, just to make him cool down for a bit, Daryl winds up showing Mick a couple of cocaine packets inside tennis balls, as they decide that night, later on, to have a little party with hookers and blackjacks and a Futurama reference that's been nearly done to death. During his spare time, Ray winds up calling Abby's old phone just because of something to keep his memory of her intact or something. I mean, for Pete's sake, when are the final episodes of this season going to lay off Abby? Last week's episode was just dedicated to the events that happened right before the season 5 premiere, and we figured out how she died, and it's despairing because I don't want to think about that episode again, because if I think about that episode again, that means I'll wind up having to rewatch it, and then all the fans will rewatch it as well, and then we'll be all despaired. Let's move on. So, sorry about that rant. Ray winds up getting a source on the kid with the evidence, but to no avail, because George, while in what I could consider a gay club, winds up just spitting out more trivia about Marilyn Monroe and her work on certain movies. I just realized, why is this kid just messing around with Ray and his associate? Why not? He could be a perfect film historian, so why all this messing around with the dress and everything? Why that? Who knows? Also, I know I said earlier that Ray winds up finding the TMZ guy and nearly beating up his car to try to get some information out of him. I actually just remember that's for, like, Ray trying to track him down and figure out where he's at, where the last time he uses cards or whatever. So it's something that Ray had to keep in mind for the information early on. But of course, things get a whole lot better from here on. He winds up telling both Ray and the associate that the box is with Vicky as George leaves and Ray hunts her down. And of course, leaving before that scene happens, Terry winds up closing the Fight Club permanently, as he winds up giving the key to Nat and Ray's apartment as he leaves, but to a mysterious extent, or at least to nobody's acknowledgement, it turns out that Natalie's boyfriend is actually across the street and basically looking out because, well, the TMZ wind up reporting how Nat's in Ray's apartment. So, yeah. Oh, and speaking of which, Nick winds up partying out with a hooker as he winds up threatening the studio to leak evidence, or at least leak what the current progress is on the movie that Mick is trying to get produced. And also, while we're on the subject of Mick with the partying with the hookers, along with Daryl, it turns out that while the house hasn't sold yet in the season, at least to our acknowledgement, for whatever reason, I think they still have access to the whole mansion. And I'm like, I thought, like, the episode as it ends and Ray drives away, we find out that the apartment got sold as soon as the family, or at least after the family wind up looking after it, and Ray winded up patching the holes in the wall, as well as tell the agent to sell the house. Guess they just needed it for a couple of more episodes, I guess. To wrap everything up, Bunchy and Dimebag winds up finding out the location, but to some mystery, a guy named Acid Man winds up turning out to be inside the trailer to where Dimebag's partner is, as they wind up finding out that his partner got shot as they're trying to retrieve the money, but a insane man, which I said was Acid Man, winds up basically nearly killing them as they run out of the place and drive off. But unfortunately, Dimebag winds up getting killed in the process, while Bunchy winds up getting shot somewhere else, not in the brain. which Bunchy winds up returning to the bar, to where Terry is just breaking out over the death of Abby and basically breaks the glass that the painting of horses are located. And Bunchy winds up coming in seriously injured, as they have to figure out what to do during this situation. We'll find out next week. And to end it all off, Ray winds up coming into his apartment and finding out that the boyfriend, as well as Nat, winds up dying. Which ends the episode, and we find out, at least what we think right now, what might happen next week. We don't know. We'll have to find out next Sunday. Or Monday by the time these videos are getting distributed. And that was Mr. Lucky. Well, although not as probably one of the bigger episodes, or at least the story definitely gets itself going. Obviously, it's staying true to the continuity of the story, especially since Frank winds up dying, and as Mickey winds up going inside for the screening of his film, of a version of his film, Ray winds up seeing him across the studio lot as he winds up calling up Frank and thinking that he's just messing around and he didn't arrest Mick. That continuity is definitely true to what the story is supposed to be, and I do like how they pull it off. It's probably not one I'm going to look at sometime down the line. Maybe for a marathon of all the episodes, because keep in mind, I haven't seen the last two seasons of Ray Donovan since 2014. That was a long time ago. But I felt like I liked everything what's been going on so far in the season. I do like how at least they gotten some information about the whereabouts of that's why I hate about living here. Dragsters and people with boomboxes. Let's see, where is I? Bunchy. Oh yeah, right. Bunchy winds up breaking out Dimebag out of prison and trying to figure out the strategy on how to get the money back. Unfortunate to them, they wind up finding an insane guy that shot up Dimebag's partner and as well as kill him. So it's up to Bunchy and Ray to try and figure out how are they going to get the money back. And how will they do so, indeed? We won't know, and we're probably going to need to find out next time. But overall, for Mr. Lucky, at best it's a decent episode. It's interesting to see we wind up getting the creepy George kid who winds up spitting out, facts about actors and whatnot. So that's kind of interesting, but I'm also surprised they didn't name the episode Marilyn Monroe, because that'd be too obvious. So, at best, it's mixed, but passable. So that is about it for this week's episode of Ray Donovan. I'll see you guys next week for the all-new episode. And hopefully down the line, we can see about what might happen in the very near future for the episodes, and see where we're at with this. And at least we're near close to the end of the 5th season, so that's good. Anywho, I'll see you guys next week for the all-new episodes of Ray Donovan, but also stay tuned for more videos. See you guys.